Hello everyone, it's Brett here, Lionheart84, and I'm filming this on the Sunday the 2nd of October. This is the monthly garden walk around and update that I try and do on the first Sunday of each month when weather allows, and luckily it is sunny today. I thought it was actually going to be raining most of today, but it's turned out to be okay, so it gives me a chance to have a look around. I only do the videos in, well, probably late spring, very early summer through to autumn, because there'd be nothing to show in December or January, but at this time of the year there's plenty happening, and therefore we can give a few updates for people that are interested. So we'll move on with the video straight away, and I feature basically mostly the hardy garden plants and trees in this one. The odd tropical might slip in simply because they're in the way as I move around, but the weather in the garden is looking very green and healthy. We've had some quite cold nights the last week or so, but nothing that's going to cause any serious problems yet. So without more ado, we'll get away, and very quickly, if the people are interested, my Crimson Bonfire Patio peach, which we did have a couple of fruits on this year, is now heading into autumn, but it's still holding some colour on the leaves, but it looks like it could do with some water, because though we've had some rain, the problem with the rain is it doesn't always get into the pots. Not doing so well, unfortunately, is my largest tree, Pomegranate. I think it's incredibly pot bound, but it's also in a gigantic pot, so I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It really could do with going in ground, but of course I haven't got a garden where I can plant it in ground, which is a shame, because it would probably do much better and probably flower and potentially even fruit at the size it is, but unfortunately it just can't cope with being in a pot, so I'm going to have to decide what to do with it over winter. I've got my hardy Tamarillo here. It's flowered all summer. It's another one that's very heavily pot bound and needs to be potted up now. Doesn't seem to set fruit, so I have been told by several people that it's not self-fertile. That obviously is the case, so I'll have to look at getting, if to get fruits on it, I'll have to look at growing one from seed. If I was to buy one from the same supplier, it's going to be grown from cuttings of the same plant, so it still won't self-pollinate, so I'll have to look at the possibility of seeds for that, unless my tropical Tamarillos do flower one day and they happen to be compatible with each other on pollen, which might be possible. Behind it I've got a Daphne, at the back is my Chilean Guava, that's Ugly Molyneux Flambeau. It's a variegated one, got affected by the weather this year and doesn't seem to have any fruits on it, although my parents' one has got a lot of fruits on. Mine hasn't got any, unfortunately. Another failure year for the Kiwi Berry, that's not the self-fertile Issai it was originally bought as. It's another variety, and I have got several other Kiwi berries now growing in the garden. I'm hoping eventually I'll better cross-pollinate it and get some fruits, but you can see that's going into dormancy now. Got frosted badly again in the spring, which always messes it up each year. Carrying on the tour, we're going to duck down low here underneath. Have a look at my in-ground Myers lemon. Doing the best it's ever done. Don't know if we're going to get edible sized lemons on it, but at least they are fully recognisable as lemons this year, so I'm quite pleased with that. It's looking a little bit moth-eaten. I think the snails and slugs have been at it, but it has put on growth this year. It's probably put on about 6 inches in height, so I'm quite pleased with how that's been doing, and maybe these fruits will get to an edible size. Carrying on, let's carry on the walk around. Obviously you'll see things like these randomly out. That's my pomelo, but it doesn't count as one of my hardy plants. Blueberries are getting their autumn colour now. They've obviously finished fruiting a long time ago. More importantly, next to the blueberries are my pineapple guavas. This variety is Mammoth. Fruits are doing very well for the beginning of October. I'm pleased with the development on these. They look as if they're going to get to a decent, at least a large kiwi fruit size by the end of November this year, and they're quite well hidden, the fruits on these. It's actually got quite a fair number of fruits around it. I'd say it's got at least a dozen fruits on it, maybe more, which I'm very pleased with. That variety is Mammoth. It's my Feijoa or pineapple guava. For people who like colour, I'm getting a really good display on the nerines this year, after I thought they'd died off last year. And they do show up a nice colour against the blueberries behind that are getting their autumn colours. It's quite nice to get that pink against this sort of dark red, although they do seem to vary a lot, the blueberries, and the speed they go into dormancy, because that one behind is barely getting any autumn colours at all. Still got my unnamed seedling variety of Feijoa in ground. Not a good plant at all. Has got a couple of, well, very poor quality fruits on it this year. It just doesn't produce what I call decent edible fruits. It's I mean, I could possibly try and graft onto it, but I think it'd be better to pull it out and give the other plants more space, or plant something else there. Behind it is my in-ground seedling persimmon, which is taken off compared to the ones in containers, typically enough. Obviously it's in the ground, so it's doing much better, but unfortunately when it had some flowers this year, it's a male plant, so it's no use whatsoever. But I may be able to have a practice with grafting, and perhaps I can cut it back in the spring and graft onto it, which would be exciting. And of course, if I was to move the pineapple guava, that would allow me to get to it at much ease to work on it, and perhaps get some grafted varieties on it. We shall see. Carrying on, this is my in-ground pomegranate, and look, it's got a it's got a nerine coming up amongst it, so the nerines are doing better than I expected. Just stunning autumn flowers. It's so nice to have something like that. So the nerines are doing quite well. I've had no flowers on this in-ground pomegranate this year at all. I think it produced 1 or 2 flower buds last year, so I actually expected it to flower much better this year, and it's done nothing. Still got remnants of flowers on my Caesalpinia. I'm going to cut that back hard this winter and get that under control, because it's a lovely decorative ornamental plant, but otherwise it serves no real purpose, except it's sort of cutting out the light to other plants, such as, I'll go right round the back, hidden away behind there is my sunflower Pawpaw. That's again only grown about 2 inches this year. It's not happy in that location, so I'm going to have to think about digging that out in winter and see if I can dig it out without damaging the root, taproot. We'll see what happens. I don't know if it's going to be possible, but as it's still small, I might better transplant it in winter and save it. See what happens. My bottle brush has done nicely this year. Cut it right back hard. It didn't have its early spring flowering flush, but it's been putting out secondary flushes of flower, and you can see there's flowers on it now, beginning of October, which is great. And it will, of course, should flower early next year. Next to that is my Triumph Feijoa or pineapple guava, which has thrown me a few curveballs this year. The fruits are doing quite well, but they were completely egg-shaped last year, and a load of the fruits around this year. And Joe, and I agree with Joe, thinks that it's to do with what pollen they've been cross-pollinated from, because I had several plants in flower this year at the same time, and I took the pollen from other Feijoas, and you can see some of the fruits are still elongated. It has got some more elongated ones, but it's bizarre because this really had very longish fruits last year, and you can see that's a very good size for early in October. They should really grow a fair bit more during the month of October, but I've just been completely thrown by the shape. Now these ones are more elongated, how I expect them to be. And interestingly, I don't know if this piece of string's still on here or not, but I did. Just trying to look to see if I can see it. It's probably fallen off. Somewhere on here I marked the first, oh here we are. This piece of string signifies the first flower I had of the year, so I had nothing to cross-pollinate it with, and it's set. It's a pretty small fruit because obviously it wasn't cross-pollinated, but interestingly it's still round. So I don't know why the characteristics of the fruit have changed on this plant compared to last year. It's a bit bizarre. Still, that's fruits for you. They do some strange things sometimes. Now you can see my Pawpaw is going into complete dormancy now. The in-ground one is going bright yellow. Now I believe this is the one that still had, let's see, yeah, look, these have just dropped in the last day or so. This has got some it's got some fruits on it ready for eating. If they might have gone past it because I didn't realise they'd dropped off, so I'll come back and get those later. That's my seedling in-ground one, and we'll probably do a little tasting video on those. I've already had one fruit off. This was a triple bunch. These are the only fruits on this tree, unfortunately. It didn't set. I thought it'd set about 12 plus fruits, and sadly they all the embryos dropped off except this little bunch of 3. So at least we've had some minor success. That's a good height now. I mean, it's in a raised border about 18 inches, but then the plant's probably about 10 feet above that. So if I can cross-pollinate it next year, might get some more fruits on it. And my campsis on the fence behind is doing really well and still got some flowers on it, and the butterfly bush is still flowering, attracting pollinators to the garden. So swinging round to the other side is my Carob, which I featured in a standalone video because, sorry about the shadow there, see if I can get round and get this in the sun. There's a possibility that these might be flower buds that could open. They're very slow developing, which is going to be a problem because we're fast heading towards winter, but at least it's showing that it's a size where it will flower when the conditions are okay. But otherwise it's looking nice and healthy. I'll be leaving that outside over winter. Should be hardy down to -2 or -3. Moving around further is my lovely little Natal Plum. Produced 1 flower for me this year, first flower it's ever had, so I'm delighted with that. So as long as I can keep that healthy over winter, should get plenty of flowers on it next year and possibly fruits. Behind it is a Kiwi Berry. Flowered too late this year to set any fruits, and as I said, I think I'm going to get rid of these and maybe plant them in perhaps in my parents' garden. I'll have room for it because they're not doing anything here apart from producing a few decorative flowers. I need to try and make some space. Now I've got here my yuzu in ground. It's put on some nice growth this year. No fruits on it this year at all, but not to worry. The main thing is it's looking healthy, so I'm thinking there's a good chance it will fruit next year. And interestingly, I'm just looking down here at my Chilean Guava Pawpaw, and I've just noticed it's got some fruits that look nearly ready. It only had about half a dozen set on it this year. It hasn't been in ground long and it hadn't really settled, but there's some colour in those, so I'll be interested to see if they're nearly edible. So I want to get them before the birds get them so I can do a tasting. Various figs here that are doing very nicely. I think this might be, well, this is a yellow Adriatic. Not sure if that's the one I grafted or not. I did one where I actually grafted it onto the top of a brown turkey, so I don't know if that one's the one I grafted or one that's growing on its own roots. Not too sure. Maybe this is the one I grafted. It's not easy to see. Oh yeah, here we are. I can see a graft on. I can see a graft on here. This needs to be stood up. So this is a yellow Adriatic grafted onto a brown turkey. So I'm going to take this little shoot off the bottom because I don't need the brown turkey growing. Carrying on, here is another Chilean Guava that I bought a short while ago. There's a myrtle next to it. This plant has gone crazy. This is my Luma Epiculata. I mean, I think it was half that high when I planted it last year, so I've obviously planted this in the wrong place. It's going to have to be cut back, and it's smothering the honeyberries underneath it, but as the fruit were shocking on those, I'm not too worried about those either. One of my mulberries here has done quite well this year, and in front of that is my Szechuan Pepper plant, which has grown really well. It's probably more than doubled in height, maybe even tripled in height, so we'll have to encourage that to branch out next year. Most problem with most of these plants is they're just probably never going to flower and fruit in pots, so it is going to be an issue for me. But as I've got too many plants and nowhere to plant them, what else can you do? So let's squeeze through the back here and see what we've got interesting to see, if anything. Climb around the back here. My delighted to say my Actinia Passiflora or Passiflora Actinia is really doing well now. Now the question will be, will it survive the winter? But it's certainly doing much better than the tropical passion flower that I previously put in there, hoping it was going to grow, which was a complete failure. Next to it I've got my maypop. The bottom of the plant is starting to go into dormancy. They yellow off quite early because they die back to the ground, but the top of the plant is actually still flowering amazingly. So that's done really well this year for its first summer in ground. I only put it in maybe about July, and it's grown and flowered really well. My challenge is going to try and be to get one to last the winter, which is where I've been unsuccessful. A quick look down here at my volunteer avocados that were kindly sown by, I would say, a squirrel. They'll therefore almost certainly be Hass. Behind it, or in front of them, is my strawberry guava. Still don't know if it's a yellow or red one. Did survive last winter in ground, which is what the experiment's about. It flowered heavily in June or July, but within 2 or 3 days of flowering, all the flowers dropped off, not a single one set. I don't yet know the reason for that, because it wasn't cold when it flowered, it wasn't dry or arid when it flowered, and I thought that all strawberry guavas were self-fertile, but it might be something to do with the shock of being so cold last winter might have held the plant back, and although it flowered, it couldn't actually hold on to any fruit. So we'll see if this can survive the winter and see if it happens, if the same thing happens next year. But it's grown a lot and I'm really pleased with it, to be honest. 2 of my 3 white mulberries have survived from their root issues, although they have been savaged by slugs or snails. The main stems had died, but I repotted them in some open soil. One of them didn't survive, that's died back, but the other ones are looking okay, so I'm hoping to overwinter them a bit better this year and get them growing properly next year. Walking around, this Persimmons losing its leaves. I don't think it's been particularly happy in a pot, this one. This is meant to be a Hanafuyu, but I'm not convinced about it being a Hanafuyu. But it's gone into dormancy early. It seems to have been a bit shocked this season, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with that next spring. I don't really like growing in pots, these plants, but that's what I'm having to do as my experiment. Asian pears going into dormancy, all 3 of them. My 2 Kiwis, a male and a female. And then the snail there, see if we can get rid of it into next door's garden. Yeah, male and a female kiwi. They've done okay this year, although they don't get much light here, which is a slight issue. My Molar Delch pomegranate that died, the main tree died, but it won't be grafted, it'll be grown from cuttings. So in actual fact, this plant at the base will still be Molar Delch, and that seems to have recovered well, so I think I'll just leave it as a bush. Been no problems with the two jujubes that survived this year have actually done quite well. No fruits on them, of course. There's another one at the back. No fruits on them, but at least they've survived, and I've got the third one sent up suckers, so I might better graft back onto that in time. The fourth one never did anything after repotting it, so that's dead and gone. You can just about see through there my pawpaws. So let's just have a walk through and see what else there is to show of interest now. I'll just walk back and show the pawpaws. Now these, unlike my seedling ones, these haven't dropped yet. There's actually quite a large one there, so I'm quite excited over that. And I might remind people that these are pot grown pawpaws, not, this is American pawpaw, of course, Asamina triloba. These are pot grown. They've just dropped off, would you believe it? Ha! Well, that's what you call live harvesting there. And I'm hoping they're going to be edible, so we'll have to do a tasting on those. That variety is Prima, not a bad size. There's still several left on the tree. I might leave them with the other fruit in the bowl for a day or two because they don't look that ripe to me. Carrying on the look around, let me slide through the back here because I've got one. This one is, let's check this pawpaw, Persimmon, I should remember the names. This is Garretson. This was the only fruit it had on it this year. It's slightly more dome shaped than the Burton fruits that we're going to look at in a minute. So that's my Garretson. Seems to be changing colour, so I'll be watching that closely, but it should be well protected in the bag. Carrying on, let's slip back through again. You can see all my Burton fruits because I've got them in these mesh bags to protect them. Now they're starting to change colour. Don't know when they're meant to ripen. These are of course astringent persimmons, so it would be no good picking them now like you could a fuyu. They've got to be sort of like soggy ripe almost to be edible, but I'm hoping that they're going to ripen this year. They're certainly double the size of the handful of fruits I got on this one last year, so quite satisfying really to see them all. Right, let me squeeze back out. I'm not going to go through the other plants in great detail because this time of year is nothing to report. Japanese raisin tree. That's my Indian bean. Blue sausage tree. I forget the name sometimes. Other persimmons are gradually going into dormancy now. Various mulberries here. Various figs. That's my Chinese chai there. Various figs are starting to go into dormancy. Lots of figs on my small in pots ones, but so I got interrupted there for a second. So these are my in-ground figs. Got various young pawpaw plants here. Some of my that's my medlar fruits still seem to be developing. They're doing quite well. Various feijoas that need to be potted up, which unfortunately didn't flower this year and haven't fruited. I've got I think I've got Coolidge, Apollo, there's a Marion here which I think does have one tiny fruit on it. Yeah, tiny little round fruit there, doesn't look as it's going to amount to anything. My loquats are recovering extremely well. Very pleased with how they're doing. There's I've got Oliver and Mrs. Cookson, but most of my pot growing feijoas have not produced any fruits. It just goes to show they've either got to be in very large pots or very well fed and looked after, and I've neglected them this year unfortunately. Might be a couple of fruits on these feijoas round the back. I think there were a couple of small fruits. Yeah, there are. There's a small fruit there. That one is probably Nikita. Well, that's unique. Well, if that's unique, it means the one next to it is Nikita, and I think they've both got a couple of tiny fruits on, but can't pick them out easily in these conditions. My Isai Kiwi Berry has fruits on it. Didn't take to the drought we had this year and incredibly hot conditions. It sort of damaged the plant quite badly and scorched it, so these haven't really developed. They're not soft, I'm not sure if they're going to end up being edible or not. We shall have to wait and see. But that's an SI, as is the one next to it, which has come back from dieback. Unfortunately, my second May pop, which I thought had revitalised itself, hasn't really done anything, so I'm not very optimistic about that. But at least the SI seem to be doing well. Should come up next year. A couple of potted figs here, which amazingly, look at this. This is the one I tried the other day. This is a black Madeira, and it's got another tiny little fruit on it, and looking at the syrup coming out the bottom. I shall come back and pick that in a minute. That's probably edible, but it's tiny. It's about the size of a walnut. Still, nevertheless, I'm pleased to see that. Finally, this little border here has got my other fig tree in it. Originally meant to have been Rouge de Bordeaux. Then we decided it was probably Languedoc, but now we think it's probably Madeleine de Saison. So never can tell. But these are the figs that have been produced as a result of my pinching I did this year. The other main crop figs probably aren't, well, they're not going to get to an edible size, but I've actually got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a couple more up the top there. Probably got 7 or 8 figs here that are definitely going to be edible, and some I've bagged already to protect them. So I'm quite pleased with how that's done. As I said, we think it's possibly Madeleine de Saison, which is a fairly early main crop fig. Looking at the leaves there, there are a few figs that look like those leaves, but we'll see. I'll probably pick one of those later today. So that's the garden tour. Sorry it's dragged on a bit. I've tried to pick out things of interest, i.e. things with fruit on, but it's not always easy to not find yourself waffling on a little bit. But it's not been a bad year this year, considering the variable climate. And hopefully we've still got a few Feijoa videos to come. Anyway, thanks for watching my lengthy video. Much appreciate it if you've had time. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell if you'd like to get updates on new videos when they come out. Catch up with you all soon. Brett out for now.